Hey, everybody, welcome. We're having yet another great late night conversation. It is Saturday, it is 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I just had a great workout at the gym, couldn't be happier, and we're going to have yet another great late night chat. Let's go.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. I am so glad to be here with all of you tonight. Like I said, I am very glad that I went to the gym. You know, you get that winter tired feeling where you're just, you don't want to do anything, but then you go to the gym and you exercise and you sweat and suddenly you're awake and full of energy. And it is the ultimate cure for the way your body just kind of hibernates and shuts down in wintertime. I'm really glad I got to go do some exercising today. I start out with that arm thing that I always do. I put my arms up in the air, hit the treadmill, do some weights. Oh, it's great stuff. And I am really glad to be back in my habit of exercising. Got out of the habit for the last couple of months because I was just running here, running there, and didn't have time to just hit the gym. But now I am back in the habit and it's feeling pretty good. A lot of wild things are happening, folks. A lot of wild things are happening. So we're going to have yet another great late night conversation, just like we always do. You can send a question for the second half of the show. Rumble Rants, Cash App me at Caleb Moppin22. The best way to send your question is buy me a coffee. Buy me a coffee is the best way to send questions for the second half of the show. It's really straightforward. There's no limit. And if you're watching this later, if you're watching this the next day or whatever, you can buy me a coffee then. It's all good. So that's the second half of the show. First, my opening remarks. Then we do the roll call and find out who's watching, names and locations. That's always fun. And then people ask their questions. So give me some questions. Give me some stuff to talk about in the second half of the program. Now, folks, the big event coming up is Earth is Awakening. America should join. January 11th, the Center for Political Innovation is kicking off the new year with a tremendous event in New Jersey. And we are really, really excited about this event. This is going to be an anti-imperialist gala. There will be a good buffet for everyone who comes, full buffet for all attendees. There is going to be music from my good friend who's a folk musician. There is going to be speeches. We're going to honor some local activists, local people that we really appreciate, people from our community, some anti-imperialist folks who've done a lot. We're going to have Garland Nixon is going to give a presentation, which is going to be tremendous. I'm so glad that he's going to be there. And it's just so much is going to happen. January 11th is going to be a heck of a way to start the year. It's going to be absolutely tremendous. So that I hope to see you there. And if you're going to join us, please register so that we know you're coming, so we can make sure that there's enough buffet food and all of that. So go ahead and register to join us on January 11th. It's going to be absolutely awesome. Hope to see you there. Other than that, we are following our normal format for the second half of the show. I'll be giving my opening remarks, and then from there, we will do the roll call, where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. And then from there, I answer your questions for the remainder of the night. So if you have something for us to talk about in the second half of the program, please send a Rumble rant, send a Cash App, Caleb Moppin22. But the best way, the absolute best way is buy me a coffee. Buy me a coffee. That's the way we're doing it, folks. And we're going to have our late night chat tonight. Tonight, the theme is imagine a world without imperialism, globalism. Imagine a world where we didn't have big banks and multinational corporations ruling over us. We instead had humanity being unleashed to build and construct. When we talk about imperialism, we're not talking about country do bad thing. Right? That's what most people think imperialism is. They think imperialism is a policy. They think it's when a country does something bad, a country attacks another country, country invades another country. That is not what imperialism is. Imperialism, as we understand it, imperialism, globalism, imperialism is an economic system. It is an economic system that emerged in the late 1800s. Capitalism in Western Europe entered a monopolistic stage in which finance capital emerged with a combination of banking and industries. Huge multinational corporations existed. You had the emergence of trusts, cartels, and syndicates, and they stretched their tentacles across the planet. They began carving out sections of the world, territorial partition, the rise of an international financial oligarchy. And that generally, when we talk about imperialism, that we see it from three different angles, right? There are three different angles to look at it with. I think the first understanding of it from an economic perspective comes from Henry Charles Carey, who was Abraham Lincoln's economic advisor. He was an economist who was very opposed to slavery, was a big part of Abraham Lincoln's cabinet and government. And Henry Charles Carey wrote a very important pamphlet when he was a young activist before Abraham Lincoln was elected, an anti-slavery pamphlet called A Harmony of Interests, where he argued that slavery in America was an extension of the English system. And he described the English system as a situation where multinational corporations, impoverished countries, underworking the Hindu and driving the rest of humanity down to his level, concentrating wealth in mighty cities, right? Impoverishing nations to concentrate wealth into one mighty city, maintaining huge fleets and armies that, control trade routes. Henry Charles Carey's very important pamphlet, Harmony of Interests, describes imperialism, an economic system. After that, in 1916, Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolsheviks in Russia, he developed a very, very important book called Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism, where he argued that the outbreak of World War I was confirmation that we didn't live in ordinary capitalism. We lived in monopolistic, moribund, decadent, decaying capitalism, the rule of the world by multinational corporations. He first wrote an important essay called Imperialism and the Split in Socialism, arguing that the socialist parties of Europe were completely bankrupt because they had not just allowed but enabled World War I to happen. They were part of imperialism. The Social Democrats, they enabled imperialism and the First World War to break out. And he argued this was because the capitalist system had moved toward a new stage of imperialism. And he laid out what that was. He later wrote a whole book, Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism. That was the Leninist understanding. And then nowadays, rising in Western or in Eastern Europe and in Eurasia and Russia and in China, you have an analysis of what they call they call the geopolitical understanding. That if you look at the past 5,000 years, right, we're not just talking about capitalism in the 1800s. We're talking about 5,000 years of civilization, right? If you look at all the empires that existed on the Chinese mainland, look at all the empires that existed in what is modern day Russia, and you compare them to the ancient Greek city-states and their conquest and the Roman Empire that emerged, and eventually the British Empire of the 1800s, and nowadays the Western financial system, the so-called collective West, that there are two distinct modes of civilization. There's Atlanticism, which is about empires based in the ocean that control trade routes, and there is Eurasianism, which is about development on the land, right? And this is the geopolitical analysis. Thalassocracy versus tellerocracy. Thalassocracy is the empire of the sea. Tellerocracy is the empire of the land. And that the way the Chinese empire operated, the way the Russian empire operated, even though these were empires, they had a different relationship with the peoples they conquered. They built roads. They were connecting land masses. They weren't building a mighty navy to control trade routes. And so that's the geopolitical analysis that you'll get from Alexander Dugin. And you'll get from people, there's a new book, China, the Rise of a Civilization State, that kind of makes this kind of argument. So there are many different ways of slicing it. But when we talk about globalism, imperialism, or imperialism, globalism, we are talking about an economic system. Wall Street and London dominating the world, holding back development, and keeping the world poor to enrich the power of huge multinational corporations and bankers in the city of London and in Wall Street, New York, impoverishing the world and utilizing huge military force to maintain their dominance as they keep nations in poverty. That is the economic system that we're talking about. And in opposition to that economic system rising around the world, you have various countries that had anti-colonial revolutions in the 20th century or in the 21st century that are building their people up. You have the great African leader, Ibrahim Traore, who is building up Burkina Faso and the Union of Sahel States, right? You've got Putin in Russia. You've got Xi Jinping and the Chinese Revolution, right? You've got the Islamic Revolution of Iran. You got Bolivarianism in Latin America. And you've got a whole network now. You got the BRICS, right? Russia and India have just signed a military pact. They just built a huge RT studio in India. Russian President Putin is teaming up with Russian President Modi, and they're best of friends and best pals. And there is a whole new economy rising in the world beyond imperialism. And the only future that America is ever going to have is breaking out of imperialism. And that was the whole purpose of the American Revolution. The founders of America did not want to be part of the British Empire. They wanted to have a strong economy in the United States. They wanted economic development. Now, for some of them, that meant slavery. For some of them, that meant westward expansion and killing the Native Americans. It's complicated. But the primary cause of the American Revolution was, does America have a strong economy, or do we remain a trading hub in the British Empire of the Sea? And the American Revolution was a victory against the British Empire system. Unfortunately, that British Empire system maintained a grip in America with the slave economy of the South. And we really saw with the rise of Wall Street in the late 1800s, we really saw America descend into just being part of the British Empire system. But the only future that America can have is breaking out of this system and building a bridge connecting with the rising new world. We need a government here in America that will stand up to Wall Street, that will stand up to the big oil monopolies, and that will invest in communities. We need a government of action that will fight for working families, a government that will invest in communities, because imperialism is all about destruction. It is about impoverishing countries, prisons for profit, opioid addiction, war, militarism, destruction. Imperialism is leading this country to rot from within. But if we could join the New World, we could inject credit into American communities with a national bank. We could take control of our natural resources so that we become wealthier as we invest in our coal and our natural gas and our timber and our oil. And we could invest in communities. We could rebuild this country with a national jobs program, hire all the young people, pay them a decent wage to go pave the roads. We could enact an economic bill of rights and start educating people and providing health care and skills and utilizing the labor power of everyone. We need a government of action that will fight for working families, that will break America out of this dying imperialist globalist system and inject credit and investment, because at the end of the day, the fundamental belief of imperialism, what the imperialists believe, is that human beings are a cancer upon this earth. They believe that the economic problems we face are caused by humanity. They believe humanity is bad. However, if you go to the BRICS countries, if you go to Russia, you go to China, you go to India, you go to Iran, you go to Venezuela, Cuba, you go to Africa, you go to the Union of Sahel States, they believe that human beings are the source of all wealth, and that human beings are not a cancer on the earth. Rather, that human beings are the source. It's human creativity, human labor power that is the source of all wealth and beauty in this world. And they seek to build up and invest in humanity while the dying globalist system seeks to drive humanity down. This is a struggle between humanity and the drive of human beings to build and construct, and the satanic Malthusianism, the anti-humanism, and the oligarchism of the dying globalist imperialist system. And we need a government of action that fights for working families, a pro-humanity, pro-growth government right here in America. That's what we need. And it's a struggle, and it's a battle, and that ultimately there is some hope, but it's difficult. And one of the signs of hope is the fact that right now we could be seeing an end to the war in Ukraine. Billions of our tax dollars have gone to fund this ugly conflict in Ukraine, while American communities are falling apart. But it looks like that war in Ukraine could end. Kirill Dmitriev, a very, very important man, right, who is a leader. He is the head of the Russia Direct Investment Fund. He was here in New York City just a couple months ago. They had a Thanksgiving gala for him in Russia, and he is talking about building a tunnel over the Bering Sea, right? A tunnel connecting Alaska to Russia. And apparently, the Russian president says there are over 70 companies in America, 70 companies that are excited to start investing in Russia again. Wouldn't that be great to have our economy break apart from Europe, distance itself from Europe, and get closer to the rising new economy in the East? I am so happy to see that the U.S. national security strategy is showing more and more contempt and distrust for the Europeans, and that Kirill Dmitriev is saying that with the technological breakthroughs of artificial intelligence of Elon Musk, this peace tunnel under the Bering Sea is more realistic than it's ever been. We could actually start to pivot in the right direction. A lot of bad things are happening in the world right now, no question about it, right? And we're going to talk about that. Our good friend Dan Kovalik, right? Again, we are big deal. We are a big deal, CPI, right? You can deny that all you want. Go watch the video of me with Russian President Putin. Go watch the video of us chatting with the son of the Nicaraguan president. Go watch the video of me sitting down with Ibrahim Raisi, the Iranian leader who was tragically died in the helicopter crash, right? We are always doing important stuff. When Kirill Dmitriev came to New York City, I actually had the opportunity to be with the delegation of people that met him, right? I got to meet this important Russian leader who is right now arranging the Bering Sea Bridge. That's me and Kirill Dmitriev when he came to Manhattan. Believe it or not, right? There I am, right? We are at the center of all of this. As always, nothing new for us. That's just kind of what CPI does. We're at the center when stuff is happening, the Center for Political Innovation. Our organization, we're at the center of stuff happening. One of our friends, Dan Kovalik, is a lawyer. Dan Kovalik is a longtime friend of CPI. I hung out with him in Russia when he was in Russia for the elections, monitoring, and in 2024, the Russian election that happened. I hung out with him in Nicaragua when we were in Nicaragua. I've hung out with Dan many times. Brilliant guy, great lawyer from Pittsburgh. Dan Kovalik was on CNN today to talk about an important lawsuit. And so we're going to start out. This will be our first clip we watch tonight. This is on CNN, right? The pro-imperialist. It's basically the U.S. government propaganda channel. It's technically private, but it's basically sponsored by the government. They show it in the airports. They regurgitate U.S. foreign policy propaganda. But Dan Kovalik is involved in an important legal case, and so he appeared on CNN, and we're going to watch the clip. Here we go. Dan Kovalik.
First known formal complaint is now filed over a deadly U.S. strike in the Caribbean. The family of a Colombian fisherman, Alejandro Carranza, says he was killed in this September 15 strike that you're seeing on your screen. They want compensation and an end to these killings. Their attorney, Dan Kovalik, is joining us right now. First of all, what are you seeking in this petition against the United States officials?
Well, as you mentioned, the family, of course, wants compensation. They've lost their chief breadwinner. By the way, he earned his money by being a fisherman. He was out fishing for marlin and tuna when he was killed. But the other thing they want equally is to end these killings. They want to deter the United States from continuing to do this in the future.
The Trump administration has gone very hard on those in these boats. We've talked to many different lawmakers who have yet to see the evidence that they are narco-terrorists or drug traffickers, but that is what the administration is saying that they are. What is the evidence that you will use to show that your client is not that your client, as you say, is a fisherman?
Well, first of all, the onus is not on us to prove he was innocent. It's on them to prove he was guilty. By the way, all these people are innocent because where I come from, you're innocent until proven guilty. But in any case, his family, the Fishermen's Association that he was part of, can all say that he was a fisherman and that's what he was doing. But again, if you want to prove someone's guilty, you need to take them to court. You need to try them. You just don't summarily kill them. So, again, the onus is on the U.S. government here.
Yeah. In any case, the onus is on those who are in the process of trying to prove what someone was or was not doing. I do want to ask you, though, how certain you are that you will see any compensation by suing U.S. officials, in that the client that you have is not a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, well, that's not a problem. That's why we brought this before the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, which gives a venue for non-U.S. citizens within the Western Hemisphere to bring a petition against the United States as a state for various remedies, including compensation. Now, with that said, am I certain they'll get compensation? I mean, whenever you bring a case, you can't be certain of that. But this is an avenue to do that. And I think with this case combined with public pressure, which I think is building against these strikes, I do think we can get them compensation. And I think this case will play a part in ending these killings.
What message is the family trying to send directly to the Department of Defense, to the Defense Secretary, and to ultimately the President of the United States?
I mean, what they're doing is wrong. It's morally wrong. It's legally wrong. At one point, Pete Hegseth even admitted he doesn't even know who's on these boats. And in this case, he didn't know. I hope he didn't know that this was just a fisherman who was killed. And again, they want this to stop. They want the U.S. to live up to its own values as a country that values democracy and due process and human rights. And I think the U.S. has really gone off the rails in terms of these killings. It's really destroyed its status in the world.
Dan Kovalik, thank you for coming on. We'll be following this case. I hope you will stay in touch with us to see what happens, as this is the very first person to come forward to sue under the circumstances that are being looked into now. I do appreciate it.
Right now, lawmakers are demanding answers, and Republicans.
Yeah, that is great, right? I am proud to know Dan Kovalik, right? Because these assassinations that have been carried out, where they're striking boats in the Caribbean, they don't know who the people are. And they just blow a boat up and kill a bunch of people. And they say, oh, well, they were drug dealers. They won't release their names. They won't release any evidence, right? This is wrong. And even if they are drug dealers, if someone's trying to smuggle drugs into the United States, you grab their boat and you put handcuffs on them and you take them to a court and you charge them with being drug dealers. You don't just execute them. We don't have the right to summarily execute people. And in this case, these people are not drug dealers, right? And this family now of a Colombian fisherman is saying, look, what Pete Hegseth did, this is our father, the primary breadwinner. He was part of the Fishermen's Association. He was not a drug dealer, and you were wrong to kill him. And I am proud to know Dan Kovalik. Dan Kovalik, the reason he's taking this case on is because of the fact that he's got a long history in Colombia, right? He sued Coca-Cola for their crimes against the people of Colombia. He's been involved in the struggle. I mean, they had a brutal military dictatorship in Colombia for many years, the paramilitaries and the death squads. And, so Dan's got history there. I believe he actually knows the former president or the current president, Petro, of Colombia. So, I am really proud to know Dan. I'm really glad that he's doing this. And I'm really glad he had the the bravery to go on CNN, which is, a vulturous network, and go on. I think it's probably CNN is having them on because they don't like Trump, right? Because they view Trump as potentially going to sign this deal with Russia, and they want to, do anything to hurt Trump. And so that creates an opening, and good for Dan, right? Dan is right, because the USA doesn't have the right, to just blow people out of the water and sink ships just because they say, oh, well, it's a drug dealer, right? Extrajudicial killing, not okay. The drone strike program that started under Bush, continued under Obama, continued under Trump, continued under Biden is illegal. You can't just kill people and say, oh, well, he was a terrorist. No, you have to have a due process, right? You can't, just kill people. But the U.S. government maintains this policy of, oh, if we don't like somebody, we can just kill them. Imagine if Russia did that. Imagine if Russian President Putin was picking out random ships in the ocean, not near Russia, just, random ships in the middle of the ocean and blowing them away and saying, oh, well, the guy was a no good guy. Nobody would stand for that. Imagine that China was doing that. Imagine if China was just, shooting boats in the South China Sea, and then they'd say, oh, well, the person who was there, they were a terrorist, they were a drug dealer. They would never stand for it. What the United States is doing is illegal. And there's a bunch of fake bot accounts on Twitter supporting it. But any Trump supporter that you actually talk to about it, they don't know the facts, right? They just say, oh, well, Trump's killing drug dealers. I think that's great. My cousin died from drugs. And you say, how do you know they're drug dealers? Well, that's what they said. Well, you do realize there's no evidence, right? You do realize that, there's a number, that we don't even have their names. They don't seize the ships. They just declare they know that. And it's just kind of one of their things. Now, would you be okay with the police here just killing people and saying, oh, well, they were drug dealers afterwards, and not ever releasing their names, not ever providing any evidence? I think most Trump supporters, if you talk to them about this, they understand it. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is understanding why this is bullshit. And, on top of that, we've got Rand Paul speaking up and saying that it's bullshit. And on top of that, we've got Thomas Massie, a libertarian in Congress, speaking up and, saying that it's bullshit. And a lot of Trump supporters realize that this is bullshit. And I'm glad that Dan Kovalik is doing the right thing. He's a very well experienced international lawyer. My hat off to you, Dan. My hat off to you for standing up against illegal murder by Pete Hegseth and by the Marco Rubio faction of the Trump administration, the Miami Mafia, that is trying to undermine the peace process, that wants to escalate against Venezuela and wants to carry out regime change in Venezuela, and is probably trying to undermine the peace process with Russia. We don't know that for a fact, but that seems to be what Scott Ritter and other important analysts believe. So our hat off to you, Dan Kovalik. You're doing important work. Glad to see you on the CNN speaking up. Years ago, I went on CNN one time. They'll never have me back, and I'll talk about that later in the show. But anyway, I wanted to talk about another thing, right? While we're here. So this is MSNBC, another one of these mainstream media lying networks. So MSNBC is the Democrat Party network, right? Rachel Maddow is one of their big commentators. Rachel Maddow, she talked about nothing but Russia for 4 years when Trump was in office. She talked about absolutely nothing but Russia. And she has never apologized, even though Tulsi Gabbard released the files showing Russiagate was a hoax, showing that there was no collusion, showing that Russia could have interfered in the U.S. election and clearly decided not to. That the Russiagate story, Russia did not interfere in the U.S. elections in 2016. Tulsi Gabbard revealed that. Rachel Maddow has never apologized. And now, they got a hawkish Republican and they got a hawkish Democrat, Amy Klobuchar, to do a special segment about why you just can't have a peace deal in Ukraine. And I mean, this is classic. Amy Klobuchar is a member of the U.S. Senate. And you want to talk about somebody, we're going to talk about Amy Klobuchar tonight. I mentioned her in my book on Kamala Harris, right? Amy Klobuchar is a U.S. Senator from Minnesota, and she is not a good person. Let me just put it that way. I mean, we all have our flaws and all that, but she is a person who has actively harmed many, many people. And she's a warmonger. And this is her argument to MSNBC about why we should not have peace with Russia.
The fact that you have thousands and thousands of kids that were stolen and taken away from either their families or an orphanage. A number of the ones that I met recently in Rome when the Pope took a visit with us and with the kids was about actually teenagers who were taken when their mom was killed. Another was just taken from a school, and they have the wherewithal, because they're teenagers, to get a phone from someone, and they're able to call their grandma in one case, and she was with us, and they were able to get them out. And the Vatican's been really involved in negotiating a number of kids' release. But the fact that Putin thinks it's okay to take kids out of orphanages and away from their families just shows the evil we're dealing with and why it is so important for us to stand with Ukraine, this sovereign state that has taken all the bloodshed and basically stopped Putin from marching right through Ukraine to other allies, NATO countries.
Now, this is bullshit. Everything she just said there is bullshit. Everything she just said there is bullshit. But this is part of the anti-Russia narrative, right? So the claim is that Russia, is maniacally evil. And so in the process of this Ukraine war, they're kidnapping innocent children and taking them to Russia because they're mean and they just want to be mean and kidnap people. Well, that's not what's happening. First of all, there isn't a war going on in Ukraine, in case you didn't notice. And, like thousands of people are dying every week, every couple weeks. You have 4-figure death counts, okay? 5-figure death counts. So if you have children, minors, people under the age of 18, are you supposed to just leave them there in a battle zone? Right? They said this woman, her mother was killed. So her mother was killed. Her mother's dead. She's in the middle of a place where there's active killing going on. What is Russia supposed to do? They're supposed to say, all right, stay here. Stay here. No, right? Taking children out of an active combat zone is not the wrong thing to do. It's actually a very good thing to do, right? I don't think children should be in areas where there's bullets flying over their head, where there's missiles. I mean, often in the middle of these conflicts, when you have children, when that their parents are getting killed and all that, you take them off the battlefield, right? That's the right thing to do. And President Trump, his wife, the First Lady, Melania, has actively praised Russia for how they have set up a program with the White House, with the Vatican, to reunite these kids with their parents, to reunite them with their family members. Russia is doing the right thing, taking children off the battlefield, then working with the White House and working with the Vatican to make sure they get back to their family members. What in the world is wrong with this? I mean, if you listen to her talking, you would think, oh, all Russia does is they just sit around. It's like, we are going to take the children and we're going to take them. Yes, we'll steal the children. That's not what's happening. Like, this is one of the craziest anti-Russian conspiracy theories I've ever heard, right? They are taking kids out of active combat zones, which is the right thing to do. Then they're working with Melania Trump and they're working with the Pope to get them back to their family members. My goodness, what an awful thing to do. What an awful thing to do, getting kids out of a conflict zone. And it is exactly the right thing to do. But I got to tell you, there is nobody less qualified to talk about this than Amy Klobuchar. And I will tell you why. Do you know who Amy Klobuchar is? Do you know who this woman is? You know who this person right here sitting next to Lindsey Graham is? Amy Klobuchar, she started out in politics in Minnesota as a prosecutor in the 1990s, right? Nowadays, since, the George Floyd stuff and since Black Lives Matter, there's a lot more awareness. But in the 1990s in the United States, when she was up and coming and making her career as a prosecutor, the rate of incarceration across America was rising. It was rising like you wouldn't believe. And Amy Klobuchar was a prosecutor in America, and she was a prosecutor in Minnesota. She was a woman whose job it was to fill up those jails for those prison profiteers. And Amy Klobuchar's trademark, you can look this up, and I wrote about this in my book on Kamala Harris. Her trademark was that that she would terrify juries. Now, the first thing you need to remember about the American legal system, 99% of cases do not go to trial. Right? If you in America, if you're charged with a crime, the chances that you will actually have a jury trial are slim to none. The overwhelming majority of cases, people take plea deals. There is barely ever criminal trials. If there's a criminal trial, something's off. There's generally only two reasons that there's a criminal trial. One is the person's very, very wealthy, right? If a millionaire goes on trial, right, hey, it usually takes 2 years for the trial to finally happen. It's very expensive, but if you're a millionaire, you can go to trial because you're a millionaire. You can afford it, right? That's one reason, is the person's ultra wealthy. That was not the reason in her case, and we'll get to it in the cases she took on. We'll get to that in a minute. The second reason that you might go to trial is because you're innocent. Let me emphasize that. Why would somebody put themselves through 2 years of turmoil, 2 years of having to show up for court dates and not being able to hold a job, 2 years of paying legal fees, 2 years of not knowing if you're going to be going, to prison for a long time? Very, very few people subject themselves to going to a trial. If a case goes to trial in America, it's something's off. Something's not right. In some cases, if states have a 3-strike law, where, it's your third felony, you automatically get 25 years in prison. So in some cases, for example, like if it's a third strike, right, in California, they would go to trial for their third strike because you got to do anything you can to avoid 25 years, things like that. But regardless, Amy Klobuchar was a trial prosecutor in the state of Minnesota. And her trademark was she would use gang experts. Gang experts. That was her trademark. Now, who are these gang experts that Amy Klobuchar would use? They were guys, former police officers usually, who knew absolutely nothing about the case. They had no knowledge whatsoever of the man on trial. It would always be a black man. There would be a black man on trial, and for some reason, he is having a criminal trial, which means there's a very good chance he's innocent, or why would he put himself through 2 years of paying legal fees and all of that? So there's a black man on trial, right? And he's having a criminal trial. Amy Klobuchar is the prosecutor. Her trademark was that she would have a gang expert who knew nothing about the case get up and testify. And they would allow this, and the gang expert would get up and tell the jury all kinds of horror stories about stuff that gangs do, right? Gangs, Crips, Bloods, they're nasty people, right? No one's going to pretend gangs are not ugly and nasty, rape, murder, theft, crime, etc. So they would put one of these former cops on the stand, a gang expert who knew nothing about the case, to just scare the bejesus out of the jurors and tell them about people who got shot in the face and people who got raped and people who got murdered. And the jurors are all looking at this black man who's on trial, and they're basically being told, if you find this guy not guilty, he's going to get out and he's going to do all these things. Even though, keep in mind, the gang expert knows nothing about the case. Nothing about the case, right? I mean, he's just there telling scary stories of how scary the gangs are and how awful they are. Knows nothing about the case. And the gang expert, Amy Klobuchar's gang expert, would get up on the stand and scare the bejesus out of the jurors and tell them every nasty story about gangs. And basically, these jurors would convict black men, would convict them of crimes based on, we don't want him to get out. He might be one of these gangsters, right? One of these gang people, right? So for Amy Klobuchar to be on CNN lecturing us about how she wants parents to be with their kids, there are thousands of black fathers in Minnesota who are not with their kids because of Amy Klobuchar. Thousands of them. Her whole career in the 90s, she was a destroy black families activist. That's what she did. She was a lock 'em up prosecutor with her gang experts. So if there's anybody who should not be talking about how awful it is to separate children from their parents, it's Amy Klobuchar. She is a unbelievable, vicious sadist, liar, and con artist like you wouldn't believe. You wouldn't believe, right? I mean, look up the gang experts and Amy Klobuchar. She is a lying con artist. She is somebody who destroyed thousands of people's lives, right? She has absolutely no grounds to talk about this issue. And Amy Klobuchar, it's like, how do you find somebody who is capable of that level of evil, right? And that's like a theme in my Kamala Harris book, is I wrote the book about Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris did the same shit, right? Gang experts, all of that. She was a vicious prosecutor in the 90s, right? And how do you find it? Well, it's very interesting, right? Amy Klobuchar, right? Her father was an alcoholic who beat the crap out of her mother when she was a child, and her mother and father divorced, and she was raised by her mother, and that's how she grew up. And it's very interesting because Kamala Harris and her parents separated, and she was raised by her mother, and she hates her father, right? And Samantha Power, the regime change activist, a very similar story. And the way that the way Amy Klobuchar rose up as this ruthless prosecutor is because she wants revenge for what happened to her mother, right? She was estranged from her father for years until he, and she hates her father for beating up her mother. And so they basically, she was able to channel her hatred for her father, an alcoholic, onto all kinds of black men, and be vicious and be ruthless and get stats. That's what prosecutors in America all want. They all want stats, right? The worst thing that could ever happen is someone gets acquitted, right? God forbid somebody get acquitted and not go to prison for thousands of years. So she was desperate to get those stats, desperate to destroy some lives, because she wanted revenge for her father, revenge on her father, just like Kamala Harris, just like Samantha Power wants to invade countries. Samantha Power's entire career is making a war against some communist or socialist or anti-imperialist government led by a powerful man, right? And Samantha Power also, father, alcoholic, beat the mother. It's the same story, right? Amy Klobuchar is a psychologically damaged person who sees herself as a victim, is very angry, and has a lot of trauma from whatever went on, in her household. And so they have got her, and they enabled her to become somebody who is capable of a level of cruelty and indifference to other people's suffering and sadism that you would be, most people are not capable of. Most people are not going to be sitting there saying, all right, I'm going to make my career separating families. I am, most people who know the details of the American legal system are not going to think, oh, wow, here's one of these rare cases where somebody goes to trial. I'm going to hire a gang expert who's going to get on there and scare the crap out of these jurors, to convict a black man who's probably innocent. You have to find a person who is really, really damaged and full of rage and really, really is indifferent to other people's suffering. And that's Amy Klobuchar. So as you hear her talking on here, I'm going to play the clip again. There is nobody who absolutely, she should not be talking about this issue, right? For her to make this claim about Russia, right? It is outrageous. Let's play it again.
Have thousands and thousands of kids that were stolen and taken away from either their families or an orphanage.
Yeah, they were taken out of an active combat zone, right? You realize there were bullets flying. The Ukrainian army and the Russian army were fighting each other. And Russia said, you're under the age of 18. Let's get you the hell out of here. God forbid they take children out of an active combat zone. God forbid.
A number of the ones that I met recently in Rome, when the Pope...
In Rome, where the Russian government is cooperating with the Vatican and with Melania Trump to get these kids home, right? You met them in Rome because Russia helped them get to Rome. You do understand, right? You do understand that, right? That the reason you met them in Rome is because Russia helped get them there, you lying sack of shit.
Took a visit with us and with the kids, was about actually teenagers who were taken when their mom was killed.
So their mother died in a war, in an active combat zone. Their mother died, and Russia was just supposed to leave them there on the battlefield and say, all right, you're on your own. Hope you can duck bullets. No, they got them out. Their mother was dead. And they got them out of an active combat zone.
Another was just taken from a school, and there
just taken, right? There was no war going on or anything. Russia just went to a school and said, all right, children, we're taking you. Give me a break. Just taken from a school, right? It's not like there's a war going on or anything like that. It was just, Russia drove up to a school with an unmarked van and offered the kids candy to get in the van. Like, what the fuck are you lying about?
have the wherewithal, because they're teenagers, to get a phone from someone, and they're able to call their grandma in one.
Yeah, so they called their grandma, right? But here's the thing. If they were already in Russia and they called their grandma, how did they get to Rome, right? Do you think Russia just lets people go? That's because Russia let them. They called their grandma and Russia arranged for them to go to Rome, you lying sack of shit. Like, do you not know how borders work? So what did they call their grandma and then she flew a helicopter into Russia to airlift them? No, she called her grandmother, they made the arrangements. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
Case, and she was with us, and they were able to get them out. And
they were able to get them out, meaning that Russia enabled her to leave. Minors can't just walk across the Russian border. Have you ever been to another country before? They have these things called customs, and all of that. And if you're a minor, an unaccompanied minor who's been escorted out of a war zone, they don't just let you just walk across the border, right? If she was able to be there, that's because her release was arranged by Russia. Russia is actively reuniting these kids with their families. Read what Melania Trump, the first lady of the United States, has said about it. Russia wants these kids reunited with their family. Russia is not engaging in any kidnapping. Russia is getting children out of active combat zones and back to their families. And you are making it into something it's not, for political gain, because you don't want peace.
The Vatican's been really involved in negotiating a number of kids' release. But
the Vatican has been involved. I thought Russia was just kidnapping these kids and disappearing them forever, right? So the Vatican and Melania Trump and Russia and the United States are all working to get these kids home. Oh, the horror. God forbid they try to get kids back to be with their parents, right? You just admitted here that the Vatican and Russia are talking and figuring out how to get these kids out. So that's not kidnapping. Actually, that means Russia's doing the right thing. You're admitting that, but that just doesn't, you're trying to make scare porn to put on television when the actual story you're telling doesn't match what you're telling, You should go, this is just like the gang expert testimony you use to destroy thousands of families, Amy.
The fact that Putin thinks it's okay to take kids out of orphanages and away.
No, he doesn't. The fact that Putin thinks it's okay to take kids out of active combat zones so they don't get their heads blown off by missiles
from their families just shows the evil.
Yeah, the fact that Putin wants to get kids out of active combat zones and not get killed. My goodness. I've shown you all this image before. I will show it again. This is a monument to all the children that Ukraine killed between 2014, when the Euromaidan coup happened, and 2022, when the special military operation got in. It's the Alley of Angels in the Donbass, in the Donetsk People's Republic. Ukraine was actively shelling and bombing the eastern republics, the Donbass region, and killing them. So, that was what was happening with our tax dollars. And they're so desperate to keep people from knowing that this happened, they actually banned the Wikipedia page. They've removed the Wikipedia page to this memorial over and over again. They don't want people to know that Ukraine's government murdered children.
And why it is so important for us to stand with Ukraine, this sovereign state.
Sovereign state, Ukraine, a sovereign state. You do realize that Ukraine's government was violently overthrown in 2014. The Euromaidan coup, the United States invaded, basically toppled the Ukrainian government with NGOs, installed a fanatically anti-Russian government, and the people in the eastern regions, the people in the eastern regions declared independence, right? So Ukraine is not sovereign. Do you realize the people of Ukraine voted for Zelensky because Zelensky said he would end the war? And then he got into office and realized, oh, he's not able to actually end the war because at this point, the war is very much, something that Ukraine doesn't have the right to end. This is ridiculous. This is beyond ridiculous. And I mean, yeah, so Zelensky was elected to bring peace to Ukraine and couldn't do it because he's not the real leader, because Ukraine is not a sovereign nation.
Taken all the bloodshed and basically stopped Putin from marching right through Ukraine to other allies, NATO countries.
Yeah, that's what Putin wants to do. The whole reason that Russia is angry about Ukraine joining NATO is they don't want to have a war with NATO, right? If a NATO country gets attacked, all the NATO countries have to go to war. So why is Russia angry about Ukraine joining NATO? Because they don't want there to be a situation where they can't fight with Ukraine without going to war with NATO. So why in the world would Russia, they're trying to go to war with the NATO countries and Ukraine is blocking them? No, they're trying to make sure they don't go to war with the NATO countries. That's the whole point. They don't want Ukraine to join NATO. Like, so I mean, what in the world is this about? I mean, this story that Russia really wants to invade France and Russia really wants to invade Belgium, but Ukraine is holding them back. Like, what are you smoking? What are you smoking? If any of the NATO countries goes to war with Russia, right, then all of them do, and you've got nuclear war at this point. So no, Russia does not want to just march into France and Belgium and Italy, but luckily the Ukrainians are holding them back. This is like complete and utter delusion, right? Amy Klobuchar, I cannot stand Amy Klobuchar. I really cannot, and I really, really cannot stand her lies, etc. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. I wanted to get that out of my system. But listen, folks, the Center for Political Innovation, we're a great organization. We're doing very, very good stuff. We're building and organizing. You should join CPI. And we're involved in all kinds of great stuff. We had a great meeting this afternoon. Look, our LA members are out in the street just right now. I think I've got a couple videos I can show you. Our LA members are right now in the streets of Los Angeles with the Hands Off Venezuela rallies that are happening. Let me see if I can show you. This is some of the video I got from Dan, one of our members in LA, right? Our whole team in LA was just at the Hands Off Venezuela rally. Here's Dan.
This is Dan, now man, Nice Wonder, here in Pershing Square, downtown Los Angeles, for the Hands Off Venezuela, No War with Venezuela rally. They're getting ready to march in a minute, and it looks to be like maybe 1,000 people here or so, and we're going to talk to a couple people along the way.
That's great. Yeah, I can't wait till we have the full video from the Hands Off Venezuela rally that Dan is part of. I think it's really, really great. They're doing great work in LA, in Chicago, in Minneapolis. Penny is always doing outreach to CPI, Build the Peace Bridge. And I mean, my goodness, we have got such an active group of people that is always doing stuff. The Center for Political Innovation is marching ahead. Dare to struggle, dare to win. Here we go. That's an older video. I think we made that video in 2023, but we had a national convention last summer in Chicago. This is kind of the summary video we did of the national convention in Chicago. I'll put that on the CPI National Convention. Yep, that's us, CPI. All right, names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. We got Red Axis in Ottawa. We got Lawrence Johnson in Chicago. We got Bill in Tasmania, Ryan in Kansas City, Alex in Brazil, is a Bruafrid. Okay. Jane in New Zealand. Who else is with us tonight? Names and locations. Sid Duarte in Dean Brewer Park. I don't know where Dean Brewer Park is. John in Florida, Scott in Maryland, Jacob in Wisconsin, Liverpool, UK. Hello, Moscow. Very good. Very good. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. Anybody else? Anybody else? Names and locations. La Cupacabra in Albuquerque. All right. Everin in England. Welcome, Everin. Good to see you. Anybody else? Names and locations. Texas. Texas. All right. Yeah, I think the Three Stooges, right? They used to have the thing is that when they would say Texas, it would be Texas, right? And that was a reference to the song Deep in the Heart of Texas, right? You know, the stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. And so, like, as a joke, the Three Stooges, every time they'd mention Texas, they would say, we're going to go to Maine, we're going to go to Illinois, we're going to go to Arizona, we'll even go to Texas, right? And that was just like the running joke, right? I will say, you know, the Three Stooges, that's classic comedy from like the 1940s. And then they started showing them on television in the 1950s. But it's comedy from the 1940s, like shorts that they would do. They would show at the movie theater, 15-minute like comedy shorts. The physical comedy is not that funny, honestly. There's a lot of slapping and poking people in the face with pens and stuff like that. But there's a lot of like very clever puns in the Three Stooges, right? If you watch it, there's a lot of very, very clever puns. You know, if you listen to it, you know, the shorts were very short. They were only like 15 minutes. And so they kind of cram the jokes in there. And there's a lot of very, very funny puns. I've always thought that one of the funniest routines they did was, I could probably get away with showing it on here if I just show a little bit of it. I can't obviously show the whole thing, but it was from, they did a sketch that was set in a courtroom. You know, right. It was set in a courtroom, and if I can just, yeah, right, I can put it on because it's short enough. I can get away with it, right? But I do find this to be clever in many, many, many ways. I'll put this on. Why not, right? Why wouldn't I put it on, right? I will put this on. I am going to answer questions here in the second half of the show. I've got one Buy Me a Coffee that's come in. We've got one Rumble rant that's come in, but more questions are always appreciated. More questions are always appreciated. So if you can, more questions, Buy Me a Coffee is the best way to send it. But I'll put this on briefly, then we'll put on another video, and then I'll answer people's questions. But yeah, this is, I think this is good comedy, right? Maybe I'm just old-fashioned, right? Maybe I'm just old-fashioned, but I think that this is genuinely funny, right? Forgive me. Oh, JT24 is in Mississippi, right? Yes, it's from Disorder in the Court. Classic humor. This, I think, is funny stuff. Here we go.
Take off your hat. Now raise your right hand. Now place your left hand here.
Take off your hat.
Raise your right hand. Now put your left hand here.
Please take off your hat.
Raise your right hand. Now put your left hand here.
Will you please take off your hat?
Raise your right hand. Now put your left hand here.
Take off your hat.
Raise your right hand. Will you get rid of that hat? Raise your right hand. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Huh? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Are you trying to give me the double talk?
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Why don't you answer him?
He's talking pig Latin. I don't know what he's saying.
He's asking you if you swear.
No, but I know all the words.
He's asking you if you'll swear to tell the truth.
Truth is stranger than fiction. Judgy Wudgy.
Kindly address this court as your honor and take the oath.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Certainly. What have I got to lose?
Yeah, I think that's funny. I think that is funny, right? Simple comedy for simpler times. Yeah, I find that humorous, right? Maybe that's just, that's just that old-fashioned, I have this old-fashionedness about me. I don't know. I grew up in a small town. I don't know what it is, but I think that stuff is funny. Diana in Orlando is here. Good. We always got a great crew of people here. We got a good crew of people. So listen, I've got a couple questions, but we need more questions. So send questions for the second half of the show. Please send questions for the second half of the show. Questions can be sent via Rumble Rants. They can be sent to me via Caleb Maupin 22 on Cash App. The best way is buy me a coffee. So I'm going to put on the video of our Ibrahim Traore rally, which was one of our better rallies. I think it was a great anti-imperialist day of outreach we did during our 7-day program last summer. I'm going to put that on, and I'm going to take a bathroom break and put that on. And after that video, I'll be answering questions. So send questions for the second half of the show. I'm going to take my bathroom break while we watch the Ibrahim Traore rally, and then I'm all yours. Send me some good questions. Throw me a softball that I can knock out of the park, or better yet, pitch me a hard ball and I'll still knock it out of the park. That's the way we do things here. We love Ibrahim Traore. Send me some questions. We'll be right back.
In Rockford, Illinois, and we're here to say that Ibrahim Traore is right and AFRICOM is wrong.
Hands off Traore! Hands off Africa! Hands off Traore! Hands off Africa! Hands off Traore! Hands off Africa! Hands off Traore!
Today we're speaking about Ibrahim Traore, all the good things he has done.
He is actually a leader that's provided true inspiration, not just for his people of Burkina Faso, but for everyone around the world.
Are in the belly of what is happening around the world. We get up, we go to work, we go home, we get online. We pretend like we don't know, but we do know. We feel the crushing imperialist boot on our necks, and can we get it off? Yes, we can!
Yes, we can!
Fuck yeah!
Fuck yeah!
We can!
Yes, we can!
Don't let them stop you.
Ibrahim Traore is the captain, president, Ibrahim Traore, the traditional president of Burkina Faso.
I think he's a remarkable leader for the whole world. Whenever I see him, I'm really compelled by him.
Taking hands off of Ibrahim Traore. And we're representing the Center for Political Innovation because we want economic development. We don't want degrowth.
People are liking it, huh?
Yeah, a lot of people are receptive or at least curious.
And I think if we take an example like this, and stand up for countries like this and learn from it, we too have a better prosperity, not just for ourselves now, but for generations to come. So unique and so different from the various other leaders of the world. He's amazing to me.
Down with NATO!
Down with NATO!
Hands off Africa!
Hands off Africa!
Down with NATO!
Down with NATO!
Hands off Africa!
Hands off Africa!
We are an energized group fighting for working families. We are an energized group fighting for the world. We want this message to get out to everyone, far and wide, to get off your butts, to make it happen. We are one because we are in this fight together.
We've got Africa's Flame, the rise of Ibrahim Traore, the current president of Burkina Faso, who's doing beautiful, amazing things, building up the country for his people.
They kicked out the French. They formed an alliance with Mali and Niger. Security defense, economic defense. Traore is leading an agricultural revolution. They are training soldiers to be farmers. They're training farmers to be soldiers. And he's a Muslim. And it is now a crime in Burkina Faso to stir up religious division that undermines the unity of the country.
So we're supporting a real role model here.
Let me tell you a little bit about this man, Ibrahim Traore. This man is not only a leader for Burkina Faso who cares about the people of Africa and the people of the world, who's standing with Russia, who's standing with the people of the world against U.S. imperialism. And it's because that he's doing that they've made so many attempts on his life.
I would be willing to put my life on the line for him, to protect him, because he's, he represents hope. He represents true hope and progress in this world, and I pray to God that nothing happens to him.
And my question is this: where does value come from? Where does value come from? They want you to think value comes down from the sky. They want you to think value comes from Wall Street derivative ripoff schemes. They want you to think value comes from Facebook likes and shares and hits. They want you to think value is magical. But the answer to where value comes from is within you. It is within you. It is your human labor power and your creativity. That is the source of all wealth in this world.
Yes.
And if we want to have a strong economy, we need to invest in human beings, invest in people, invest in children so they grow up and get an education and become strong and powerful and effective and smart. We need to invest in communities. We need to invest in families. That is the future.
Freedom. I think of economic growth. I think of someone who truly cares about the needs of the people and not the top 1% or the top 0.01% or whatever it is, which is the rest of the world seems to be focused on in the West anyway. We need economic development for everyone, not just for the people at the top. And that's the kind of system we're living under, why people are struggling so much.
We are here to proclaim that we will not be stopped. We will not let the imperialists threaten us. We will not let them intimidate us. We are CPI and we are here to fight for Africa.
Yeah. Like you guys in the US, ourselves in Australia, we're being held back by big finance, and we need to have a government of action that fights for working families and ordinary working people.
Investing millions and millions of francs to revamp stadiums and hold games for youth sports, so they can be healthy and strong, and they can build an identity of their own in working together. Ibrahim Traore was a soccer player himself, and he just held a very friendly game with other professional soccer players, and he won 3 matches. How about that? Go Traore!
Go Traore!
Let all nations have self-determination and develop peaceful relationships, peaceful trade with each other, and innovate and share that innovation with each other so that we can live in peace, prosperity, and harmony, because there is plenty to go around.
This is the model of what can be here. You must fight. You must get up. You must be brave. Don't let them tell you that your words have no meaning, that they'll throw you in jail if you speak up. The more of us that speak up, what happens? The more speak up, and more speak up. Don't let that frighten you. Get off your butts, do something about it. Fight for a future that you want.
We need a world where people refuse to take advantage of the downtrodden. We need to take an alternative road, because the road we're going is leading us to nowhere but to oblivion.
And this leader in Africa is a leader who understands that. And that is why he is investing in his people. He is providing free health care to mothers in the hospital. He is providing university education to his people. Not only is college free, but while you're there, you get a stipend, a paycheck, so you can focus on your studies. You don't have to work. Imagine that. The young people of Burkina Faso, in a way, are richer than all the young people in America. You go to college in America, you're going to be in student debt for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 20 years. In Burkina Faso, not only do you not go into student debt, but on top of that, you get a paycheck while you're there so you can pay your bills and focus on your studies. He is enabling millions and millions of people to rise up from poverty, to launch their own farms, to pave their roads. Fisheries are opening up. Pineapple orchards are opening up. This is a pro-growth president who invests in human beings and invests in his people.
There's nothing more important right now happening in the world than what's happening right here in the belly of the beast, in the belly of imperialism. Can we make this happen? Yes. Yes, it can happen.
What we need is a win-win situation where we can find an economic system where deals or contracts whereby what makes America prosper also makes our trading prosper.
Better world is possible, but understand, if we don't believe that, if we listen to those who tell us that nothing is possible, then that's what we will get. We will get nothing.
Hands off Africa! Hands off Africa! Hands off Africa!
What can I say about imperialism other than the fact that it is a crushing force that is now taking its way from the tentacles of the United States and around the world, sucking the resources from other countries, impoverishing them, degrowing them, crushing them, making sure that they can't become everything that they have dreamt of being.
Organizations such as the Center for Political Innovation is critical to spreading the awareness, the knowledge of leaders such as Ibrahim Traoré.
And right now we don't have a government that invests in people. We have a government that invests in destroying people. A government that invests in bombs and tanks and weapons and prisons for profit. A government that defends drug cartels. A government that arms terrorist groups. And that is not the way forward. There's a small group of very, very rich people who sit at the top of the world. And they've decided that the only way they can keep their throne, keep themselves at the top, is to stop human progress. And they're wrong, because there is no limit to growth. There is no limit to growth. Human creativity and brilliance is unlimited. And we can build and we can construct.
We got books! We got books!
I saw two cars pull up at the stop sign, and then they had their lights, they were flashing to get our attention. And then I saw a fist come out, and then I was like, oh yes, there's somebody who absolutely understands what we're doing. And then I saw a woman come out, and she started honking her horn, and then I didn't know there was a car behind her, and then we just started cheering. They were just honking. I heard them say thank you, because now they know what we're about, what we were doing, what we're standing for, why we're out here on this road, getting the attention of those who pass by. So they all honked. The car behind them came out and they honked as well. And they seemed extremely supportive, very happy that we're out here bringing awareness, you know, in a place where, likely of all places, would you see a big giant sign, a big, poster of Ibrahim Traoré. But here we are, CPI, bringing awareness, making it happen, and understanding that people, the more we do this, it'll catch fire. Indeed. And it seems as though it already has.
I think, there's been a number of people that have positive reactions to our rally, to the banner, to our chants, to our speeches.
We will march together, we will fight together, no matter who you are, no matter what political persuasion, no matter what race, because we are all here fighting a class struggle that is more than the sum of its parts. We are one.
But I think if we're getting positive reactions like that out here, that's a very good sign. And it's a sign of progress, and it's a sign that people are starting to wake up.
Ibrahim Traoré is working with Russia Bad! Russia Bad! Oh my God, Russia Bad! No, Ibrahim Traoré went to the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II in Russia, and he got to see their equipment, and he got to see their spirit of unity and their spirit of cooperation, and how they were able to defeat fascism, which we've never forgiven them for. So, also Ibrahim Traoré is investing in education for his students to go to Russia. And Russia has students coming to Burkina Faso so they can learn each other's culture and they can build peaceful nuclear energy.
Yay!
Peaceful nuclear energy.
Peaceful nuclear energy. Yeah, I love that song, by the way. That is one of my favorite Russian songs. Our Locomotive. I love trains, right? All the big CPI books. What is innovationism? And do you believe in growth? They all have trains on them. That is a song about trains. It is a Russian revolutionary song about trains. So I love that song. We're on the train, headed for the future. We are the children of our ancestors. Very beautiful song. One of my favorite Russian songs, and we used it in that video. That was a great time, by the way. I had such a great time at the 7-day program last year, and we're going to be announcing at the January 11th event the date of next year's convention, the 7-day program. It's going to be really awesome, folks. We are in such a good place right now with CPI. I got to tell you, we are speeding ahead. We got a lot of work to do, right? We got to fundraise for next year's convention. We've got to, promote next year's convention. We got a big event on January 11th. It's going to be hard to pull off. I just ordered the banners and a lot is going on, but we are marching ahead and we are in a good spot. And we're ultimately on the winning team. I mean, imperialism is in defeat and, anti-imperialism is rising. And so, I love CPI. CPI isn't for everybody, honestly. At one point we were all about join, but, it's for some people and it's not for others, right? And I hope CPI is right for you. I hope you will join us if it's right for you. But, we're about carrying out operations. We're not about just like having big numbers, right? We're about carrying out operations. That's what we're all about. So, I guess those are my thoughts about that. So I do have a couple things I want to comment on, but we'll start answering questions. We got a great question that came in from Kate. It was questions can be sent via Buy Me a Coffee is the best way. Caleb Maupin, Buy Me a Coffee. Kate sent a question, which is, how did Hugo Chavez come to power? What was the narrative of the West to manufacture consent for the attempted coup in 22? Are there any good books that tell the story of him and Chavismo? So here we go, right? I mean, I did a video earlier this week about Bolivarianism or whatever, but how did socialism come to Venezuela? But I'll quickly summarize. Hugo Chavez was a populist leader of the Venezuelan military, a paratrooper, and he attempted a military coup in 1992, 93 that failed. He was put in prison. And he ran for office, and he won the 1998 presidential elections fair and square. He was the leader of the political party formed called the Movement for the Fifth Republic. He was elected president. After he was elected president, there were big mudslides in the country. And so he mobilized the population to help the people in need. And he used the military to help the people affected by the mudslides, the very poor people who live in the mountains, who lost their homes in the mudslides. Then that was very inspiring, and he organized these community assemblies, these Bolivarian circles that were part of the rescue effort for the mudslide victims. And then in the aftermath of that, where the country was really impressed that they have this leader who's actually using the military to help people, they passed a new constitution. After they passed the new constitution, that's when the USA attempted the coup against him. And the coup, from what I understand, the argument was they used doctored video footage. There's a very good documentary you can watch called The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. It's about the coup and how it happened. And you can watch the whole thing. Let me see if I can find that for you, where they doctored video footage to make it look like Hugo Chavez supporters were shooting people down on the streets, like they had snipers, kind of like what they did in Ukraine. Part of the Euromaidan thing was they used this false claim of having snipers. Like a false flag sniper attack, it was kind of a similar thing where they took video footage of supporters and they doctored it to make it look like Hugo Chavez supporters were killing people. And that was the basis on which the coup was carried out. Revolution will not be televised. Film. It's a 2003 documentary. And here it is. Yeah, you can watch the whole thing. On Proletarian TV from our CPG-BML. They have the entire film here. So if you want to watch a whole film about the 2003 coup, watch Revolution Will Not Be Televised. And it's a lot about how media manipulation was part of the coup against Hugo Chavez in 2002. It's actually a very good documentary that shows, what was going on. Again, this was during these years, Venezuela was being supported by like Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! And stuff. And so like films like this got circulation and stuff like that. Noam Chomsky. But yeah, that's a link to the documentary that tells the whole story of the 2002 coup that you can watch. I would recommend it. The revolution will not be televised. It's a great, great piece. Are there any good books on the history of Chavismo? There's a book that I really enjoy, called We Created Chavez. And it's about the mass movement that Chavez created. We Created Chavez by Chicarello Mar. He's a Marxist professor who's a good friend of Venezuela. He's in Philadelphia. It's called We Created Chavez, and I really enjoyed that book. It's a really, good, George Chicarello Mar wrote this book, We Created Chavez. I enjoyed it. It's a study of the mass movement that Chavez built, of the communes, etc. So you want a good book on it, that's the book I would recommend, is We Created Chavez. So I hope that was a helpful answer to Kate Johnson's questions. Very, very good. Now, Leo Messi said, why is Gen Z so much unemployed? Is it financialization, migrants, a slow market? Leo Messi, I think the main reason that there is a low level of employment for Gen Z is because we've transitioned to a gig economy. Where rather than having a full-time job, Gen Z are kind of accustomed to driving Uber. They drive Uber to get some extra money to make ends meet. And that we've almost gotten to the point where they've kind of lowered expectations. Like the younger generation almost doesn't expect to have a full-time job. Obviously, I think the primary factor in the reduction of employment for young people is technology. And that's my whole thing about the tendency of the falling rate of profit, elimination of workers at the assembly line, market glutted with products that cannot be sold. But we're now in a gig economy where a lot of the younger generation don't ever expect to have a full-time job. They almost expect that, they'll make some money here, maybe make some money there. But there's almost an assumption that they won't have a full-time job. And that is pretty crazy. And we're moving toward a gig economy. I did want to say something, which is this was kind of a funny thing that happened today. There's this meme that the kids do now, 6, 7, right? And it drives the adults crazy, right? It used to be 6 and 7 were just numbers, but now if you say 6, 7, the kids go 6, 7. Right? It's a big thing. 6, 7, right? And it drives the adults crazy. So I was sitting in a restaurant, a fast food restaurant in my neighborhood, a lot of people there. And there was a family with a lot of kids. It was like a mom, and there was like 6 or 7 like kids. Maybe it was like, they were there, and one kid said 6, 7. And then the other kid said, that's a bad word. You can't say 6, 7. I thought that was funny. And then another kid said, no, it's only a bad word in California. It's only a bad word in California. It was very funny. I put a smile on my face. I grinned, I must say. That put a smile on my face, right? I'm thinking like, one of the parents told the kid, don't say 6, 7. You're not allowed. It's annoying. And so then the kid interpreted that as it being a bad word. And then the other kid said, I think it's only a bad word in California. I thought that was very sweet. It was very, very adorable. You hear little moments like that. You're sitting in the restaurant, you hear people arguing about different things, and that was something that stood out in my mind. Was I heard that, and it's only a bad word in California. So there you go, right? Yeah, there you go, right? That's one thing they've pointed out about the younger generation of kids. Is there's a lot of these like internet memes like 6, 7 or skibbity toilet or whatever that that they become a thing, and that's something to be concerned about. But anyway, so if anyone would like to send any more questions, questions are appreciated. The best way to send questions is buy me a coffee. Buy me a coffee is the best way to send questions. So please send more questions. Keep me talking. I do have a couple more things I wanted to talk about here tonight. 2 little items I wanted to talk about that came across my desk. I do want to mention, so tomorrow we're going to have like an 8-hour mega premiere video. I do that on Sundays a lot. So I've compiled a lot of different CPI stuff, and it's just going to premiere all day tomorrow. Use it as background music, background noise. I've had a lot of people say, well, Caleb, do you expect us to watch 8 hours? No, I don't. No, I don't, right? But I premiere these long videos as a way to just kind of show some of our old stuff, right? Stuff that from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, historical footage, all of that. I do these on Sundays as just something. So if you're looking for something to listen to while you exercise or something, there'll be an 8-hour premiere tomorrow of just, I called it The Movement We Need CPI. It's just a lot of different stuff I compiled together. I like to do that. That's like a thing I do, right? Is I do these long kind of video premiere, mega premiere videos I do. So if you get a chance, I would, you can do that tomorrow. But anyway, the two things I wanted to talk about. The first one was this. I cannot stand Jacobin Magazine. Jacobin Magazine is the worst. It is really the worst. Jacobin Magazine is CIA like you wouldn't believe, right? They've turned against Venezuela. It's the socialist magazine on the internet and in print, I guess, that every Mamdani, every woke, obnoxious, pro-imperialist, fake socialist reads. And it gets blasted out through social media. And it's interesting because sometimes they will make good points, but they're always on the wrong side. When Tulsi Gabbard was running as an anti-war candidate, they did a whole smear against her and, all of that. And, they've gone after Jimmy Dore and they've gone after a lot of different people, and they don't support Venezuela. So this was yesterday on Jacobin Magazine. This was their article. And so we all know Jeremy Corbyn, who was kicked out of the Labour Party for allegedly being anti-Semitic, which, how is he anti-Semitic? Jeremy Corbyn is just a longtime leftist politician in Britain. He's like the Bernie Sanders of Britain, except he's anti-war, right? And basically the reason they called him anti-Semitic is because he's anti-Israel. He's critical of Israel, but they couldn't say that. So they kept finding little innuendo and all of this, launched a whole campaign against him. So now that he's been kicked out of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn is a beloved politician who's supported by many, many people in Britain. He launched his own party, and they're calling it Your Party. Well, Jacobin, you think they'd be really excited about it, right? And a socialist politician in Britain who is really loved, he's been kicked out of the Labour Party, so he's launching a new party. They are all about it. Well, if you think that, you would be wrong. This is what they ran. Your Party conference was for the few, not the many. Owned. Oh, they got him. They got him. Oh, man. Socialism's for the many, not the few, but he's for the few, not the many. Oh, we got him. Oh, he'll never recover from that, right? Oh, my goodness. And here's the thing. You read the article, it makes some fair points about left sectarianism and, sex drama and how the group, there's a lot of confusion internally and left factionalism and stuff like that. Fine. But the thing is, this article, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, like, what's actually in here. This article is just, it is there so that the next time, I can guarantee you, the next time I meet one of these Mamdani supporting, Bernie Sanders, I think they're secret Nazis. Everyone who supports Russia is a secret Nazi. Real socialists love Ukraine. One of those fucktards, right? When I encounter one of those people, they're going to say, I'm going to mention Jeremy Corbyn, and they're going to go, no, he's bad. No, he's bad. Your party is bad. And I'm going to say, why? Because I read about it in the article in the Jacobin that says they're bad. And they won't know why. They won't know why. But Jacobin said that they're bad. So, and that's what this article is. No matter, it might make legitimate points. And, your party, a lot of Trotskyites involved. It's a very confusing thing. But Jeremy Corbyn, his ouster from the Labour Party came from a bad place. It came from a very bad place. They were calling him anti-Semitic for opposing Israel on legitimate grounds. And he was ousted, and millions of British people admire Jeremy Corbyn and don't agree with him being forced out of the Labour Party. So he's launching a new party. And Jacobin decided they wanted to send the memo out to all the young CIA, anti-Russia, regime change, overthrow the Venezuelan government, all the young, thought conforming. I'm a socialist because that means transgender bathrooms are like awesome, right? these people, right, have all now gotten the memo that they have to hate your party. Thanks, Jacobin. That was great. Thank you so much, Jacobin, for making sure all the thought-conforming, non-thinking people, that follow your ranks, that they all now hate Jeremy Cardin's new party. Great work, right? That's really helpful, right? You made sure to send the memo out that your party's no good. All right, that's great. And your party has had a lot of problems. I mean, I'm not following British politics closely. The people that we are probably closest to politically in Britain are the Workers' Party. And George Galloway, I know George Galloway is no longer in Britain, and he's, I know there's a whole thing, that's the latest thing, and so it's a whole complicated situation. And your party, there's a lot of wokeness there, a lot of Trotskyists and all that, but generally, Jeremy Corbyn was targeted for a good reason, and Jeremy Corbyn is a legit socialist who is got an anti-war record and all of that, and so there you go. I cannot stand Jacobin. I really, really cannot stand Jacobin. The fact that they put a book out attacking Jerry Healy after Jerry Healy has been dead for 35 years, right? And they published, one of their DSA guys published a smear piece against Jerry Healy just because, we can't have that. I wrote my rebuttal in defense of Jerry Healy, which I'm very proud of. It's actually one of my better pieces. I've done a lot of research on Trotskyist groups and all of that. And I really admire Jerry Healy for what he did for the Palestinians, for his solidarity with Libya and Gaddafi. And so I wrote this pamphlet in defense of Jerry Healy, which is one of my better pieces. So, I hope you appreciate it. But yeah, so I just thought I would raise that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is this, which is, this is a little bit, I'm not angry with this person at all. I just feel sad about it. So you guys saw the show last night. Last night we had a lot of people viewing. YouTube is completely rigged, and some nights I get the algorithm, I get a lot of people watching, other nights I don't. Last night it was going pretty well. We got a lot of people viewing, whatever. You just never know. Last night went very, very well. But then you all saw in my remarks last night, I talked about the role of drugs a little bit. I didn't talk that much about it. I mean, I just talked about MK Ultra a little bit, and I talked a little bit about just about how drugs, play a negative role, and how, I talked about Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, right? And how, like, part of the degrowth agenda and all of that is trying to get people drugged up. Oh my God, right? Oh my God. You would have thought I get this a lot, okay? And again, if I was a panderer, I would just stop talking about this issue. I am not going to stop talking about this issue because I'm not on here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to tell you what you need to hear, right? And this is not the first time that I say something like that, which, hey, I know people who are able to smoke weed responsibly. I've never smoked weed before, but whatever. It's legal in most states, and some people are able to smoke it responsibly. I know people who can drink responsibly. I just don't drink. I drank responsibly at one point, and then I just don't drink. But there's not. I mean, it's your business, right? I'm not here to run anyone's personal life, but generally, I view people getting stoned and hallucinogens and all of that as a bad thing. And I am generally not in favor of drug culture, and that drug culture is very much part of degrowth, and it's a psyop. And I talk about MK Ultra, right? I've talked about that many times, and often I get explosive, crazy responses like this, right? There was the response. This person is just so angry. You can't be passionate about fighting to the death if you're drugged up. Well, golly gee whiz, Caleb, someone should have told the Nazis when they were handing out tablets to their soldiers to fight passionately for days that blah 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 blah. And it's like he left like 2 or 3 comments like this. And I don't know who this person is, but I can tell you one thing: they definitely have a drug problem, right? I mean, if your response to me, and there's been times I've criticized marijuana, and I've had people that I know that are responsible smokers say to me, hey, Caleb, I don't think you're right about that. And that's fine. But if somebody blows up like this, right, and they found the one exception like Nazis being given amphetamines before battle. So therefore, drugs aren't bad. See, I told you the drugs aren't bad. Stop saying the drugs are bad. This is addicts. And I've lived with addicts, okay? I've had multiple people in my life who are addicts. And one sign of an addict is that the second you suggest that there's anything wrong with drugs, no, drugs are good. Drugs are good. No. I read about Nazis. They use drugs in the battle, so therefore they're good. See, no, stop disrespecting drug use. Stop it. Drugs are good. Drugs are good. I'm sorry, you're addicted, my friend. You are addicted. And I've seen this over and over and over again. There was one of these people who did a smear piece on me, right? And she did a smear piece on me. And in the process of doing the smear piece, she wrote like 3 paragraphs about how I'm not an alcoholic. I am not an alcoholic. And it's not about her, and it's not about her being an alcoholic, but she just wants everyone to know I am not an alcoholic. And the same with, I had a roommate who had some mental health issues years ago, and he was drinking lots of alcohol and self-medicating. And like, at one point I found him on my doorstep, with a bunch of vomit around him. That's how much of an alcohol problem he had. And yet when he was sober, if you ever suggested to him that there was a problem with his drug or alcohol use, he would get really angry and defensive because he needed that drug. Right. Look, I eat meat. And if I meet a vegetarian, I'm not offended. Right. And in fact, I've had vegetarians may even try to persuade me to become a vegetarian. I don't get angry because I'm not addicted to meat. But if meat was like the most important thing in my life and I just needed that meat to get through life, and I blew up at a vegetarian who tried to persuade me to go vegetarian, and I started yelling at them and insisting, oh my God, I must have meat, that would be a sign that I had a problem. And that's the point, right? And I'm not on here to tell anyone how to run their life, but I'm telling you, if you blow up at me like this over me talking about drugs in the context of MK Ultra and all that, you have a drug problem. You have a drug problem. And I over and over and over again, I have seen this, right? I have seen this over and over and over again of people that have a serious problem is they blow up, right? This is one of the weirdest ones I've ever seen. And this is part of the problem of our modern time. And I've touched on this. This is one of the dangers of the internet, right? This is one of the biggest problems I've seen on the internet is that people have a mental illness, right? Of some kind. And they then form a community around it, right? And I've seen this. Like, for example, right? One of these people in my life who was a drug addict, and I mean, he decided that he found an internet community of people that are opioid addicts. And he was reading to me of all, this internet community of, heroin addicts, there's all this discrimination against them, and they just they are just there's all this discrimination against heroin addicts, and and it's like, how many people have died from heroin? How many? I mean, but everyone just doesn't understand that heroin addicts are heroin addicts are just misunderstood. There's such a prejudice against heroin users, and it's like, really? There's just such a prejudice against them. How about heroin destroys people's lives and kills them? But no, they're just misunderstood, right? There are communities on the internet for people that have anorexia, right? And they're pro anorexia communities about how people should just respect anorexia. How many people with anorexia die? Right. But it's, and this is a really common thing of like someone has some kind of mental health issue and they then decide, well, I'm going to make a community around it. And that's one of the dangerous aspects of the internet. And it's not a real community because one of the biggest signs, drug addicts can't maintain real friendships, but they can be part of an internet forum where they get on there and whine about how no one respects heroin addicts. But if you're actually a heroin addict, you can't have a real friend because you're a heroin addict. And that's what people that have survived addiction will always tell you is that when they were an addict, they didn't have real friends. They stole from their friends. They lied to their real friends. All that ever came out of their mouth was lies and manipulations to get more heroin. So you can't have real relationships if you have this kind of severe mental illness, right? Because you're addicted. But you can maintain a membership in an internet web forum about how no one understands heroin addicts, right? Look, I will tell you all, right, that that for me, right? When I first moved to New York City, I was in the Workers' World Party, and there was a group of people in the Workers' World Party who had been in the Fourth Wall Institute, which was like a psychoanalytic group in New York City, that was, that was widely accused of being a cult. It had dissolved, but like there were a couple people who had left the Fourth Wall Institute and joined the Workers' World Party. And honestly, for a year, I had therapy with a woman from Fourth Wall Institute who had been trained at the Fourth Wall Institute. And I look back on that, and that was actually probably illegal. She was doing it without a license. I mean, I don't know. And she was not very good at what she did. But one thing is, I did read some of the Fourth Wall Institute literature. And their theory was basically, they argued that mental illness is, interpersonal. That was the basis of one of their theories, right? Their founder was a guy named Saul Newton, who was a Freudian psychoanalyst. And they argued that mental illness is interpersonal, right? And that mental illness is mainly related to how you relate to other people. People that are paranoid, they relate to other people in a way that reinforces their paranoia. People that are, what do you call it? People that are, I forget, people that have various mental illness, it's related to how you relate to other people. And I honestly believe that to be the truth, right? When I've dealt with, there was somebody I knew, it's actually been two people in my life I knew who became schizophrenic, both of them. And one thing I noticed about both of these people is that their schizophrenia was very much about isolation. They believed crazy things that didn't make any sense. And they didn't want to talk about it, right? Because, and that was part of them going over the edge, was that they developed kind of crazy beliefs in their mind, and they didn't want to talk about it because they needed to believe it, right? It's kind of like the addicts that I'm describing, right? That, and that, like one of these people, he had developed this very outrageous theory about, all kinds of stuff, and I remember, like, he finally told me all this stuff he believed. And I said to him, like, that doesn't make sense. And he started crying and yelling. And it was like, it must be true. It must be true. And that's schizophrenia, right? That's the whole thing about, there's a difference between neurosis and psychosis. Most people are neurotic, right? It's rooted in patterns. The psychoanalytic tradition says mental illness is rooted in how you understand patterns, which is actually very important, right? Learning is basically observing patterns, right? And that neurosis is when there are certain patterns in your life you don't notice. Addiction is a classic form of neurosis. You want to quit using the drug, you want to quit doing the compulsive behavior, but you don't have the ability to do it, right? That's neurosis, right? But there are many other forms of neurosis. Paranoia, what else? Anger issues that people might have, neurosis is everybody, right? Everyone to some degree or other is neurotic, right? You can't be aware of every pattern that exists in your life, right? So neurosis is the primary form of mental illness, but schizophrenia and people that are, schizophrenic and other, like, that's the opposite. That's called psychosis. And psychosis is when people go completely over the edge, right? They go completely over the edge and they start they start making up patterns that are not there in order to try and make sense of the world. They're so afraid and they're so unhappy, and they can't handle reality. So they start kind of inventing their own reality and pointing to patterns that are not there, right? That's the difference. Neurosis is not noticing patterns, making the same mistake over and over again. That's the cliche you always hear about. He makes the same mistake over and over and over again. That's that cliche, right? That's what that's referring to, is neurosis. Whereas psychosis is when you're seeing a bunch of patterns that are not there. You're not in touch with reality and all of that. And when people become psychotic, one thing I have noticed is that in order to maintain their psychosis, they must keep believing. They withdraw. They develop very complicated, crazy ideas that don't stand up to just basic conversation. And they're afraid to talk to you about it because you might change their mind. And it's really, really tragic. And, and that they've pointed out people that are in more danger of becoming psychotic are shy people. Why? Because they don't want to talk about it. because talking to other people keeps you grounded in reality, right? But people that are psychotic, they don't want to talk to you about it because they want to hold on to their delusion. They need the delusion. The delusion is there to protect them, right? And so they're afraid to talk to you about their delusion because you might debunk it and then they'll have to face the reality. And they invented the delusion to protect themselves from a very, very painful reality, right? And that's psychosis, right? And so the belief of the fourth wall people, the Sullivanians, at least what I understood from them, and I'm not here to defend the group. I know it has a lot of history, but one of the beliefs, that they had, and I read it in their textbook. I have their textbook on the wall somewhere. Is they maintained that the interacting with other people is the primary way to keep yourself grounded in reality. You need to have friends. You need to connect with other people. And on top of that, that mental illness is primarily rooted in how you interact with other people. And that the mistake that psychoanalysis and that a lot of psychology makes is it individualizes it. It focuses on your personal history, your personal beliefs. But when it really gets down to it, your beliefs and whatever trauma you might have, it's about how you relate to other people. It's interpersonal psychology. And honestly, my life experience, I'm only 38 years old. I'm actually going to be 38 later this month. I'm only 37 years old. My life experience confirms that mental illness is largely rooted in how you relate to other people, right? And that if you've had a traumatic experience, that's going to, affect how you relate to other people. And that's going to lead your behavior and your mind to go certain places. And that the more you connect with other people and the more you're able to put yourself in other people's shoes, the more that you're able to think about other people's feelings, the more that you're able to feel empathy and compassion, the more that you're able to understand other people's motivations, the healthier you will be. And that is my experience. I am not a psychologist. I have no license. I'm just giving you my assessment as an individual. The more empathy that you have, the more you can understand other people's motivations, the more that you can put yourself in other people's shoes, the healthier you will be because you will be grounded in reality. You will understand what's going on. You will be able to connect with people and have the fulfillment that human beings need. That largely a way to maintain one's mental health is through connecting with other people. That is my experience. That is my experience. And that is what I believe. And again, maybe I'm not qualified. I don't have a degree in psychology. I've not been confirmed by any psychoanalytic institute or anything like that. I'm just telling you, in my experience, mental health is generally rooted in connecting with other people. And this explosion from this person who was really, really upset that, my God, how dare I say drugs are bad? Drugs are good. They know it's a fact. They found Nazis using drugs before they went into battle. So that proves that drugs are good. So therefore, that says to me the person is very, very defensive and afraid. You know what I mean? That's what it says to me. It says to me the person is very, 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 very scared of somebody potentially suggesting that they need to stop using drugs because they are dependent on the drugs. They are dependent on the drugs. They need those drugs for some reason, right? And they're very, very afraid of acknowledging that they have a drug problem because they become dependent. And that's what dependence is, right? If you're drinking alcohol because it's fun, but it doesn't really matter, that's one thing. But if you're dependent on alcohol, you are an alcoholic, right? And if you are really, really afraid that your drug habit might go away because you really, really need it to get through life, that's a sign that you have a drug problem, in my experience. So, that's my experience. So, that person who left those comments may be really, really mad at me. They clearly are because I disrespected drugs, but I'm just giving you my analysis of them. The fact that they blew up that strongly against me for just suggesting, I wasn't talking about anyone's personal life. I'm talking about politics. I'm talking about degrowth and all of that. That tells me they have a drug problem. That's my analysis. All right, folks. So more questions would be appreciated. As you can see, I've got plenty of energy here. Buy me a coffee is the best way to send questions. Buy me a coffee. Buy me a coffee is the best way to send questions. If you can send them, that would be great. Buy me a coffee, cry me a river. No, that's Crimea, right? Whenever I say Crimea, people say cry me a river, but buy me a coffee is the best way to send questions. I do see that we have a couple Rumble rants that have come in. I think quite a few from Hempcar. All right. Oh, wow. Hempcar sent like five things in. Okay. Hempcar, I will. All right. We already did Leo Messi's thing about Gen X. So then Hempcar says Wikipedia claims the Stasi would break into homes and change around the socks in the drawers. Okay. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, it could be. I don't know about that, but I don't care. I mean, maybe they did that. I don't know. Stasi was the secret police of East Germany, right? And there was most communist countries have a secret police that is, important in maintaining the power of the state, right? That is part of the Soviet, political system. So I don't know. Do you think the USA is committing crimes? Yes. Yes, I do. I do think the USA is committing crimes, right? They're murdering, civilians in boats. That's a crime, right? Dan Kovalik is taking that to court. I mean, yes, I do think the USA is committing crimes. Then he linked, have you ever heard of targetedjustice.com? It's a group of lawyers who claim they are targeted. Not sure how credible they are, but wouldn't doubt it. Okay, targetedjustice.com. 501c3, fighting for peace and restorative justice for targeted individuals. Yeah, this is that community that I was warning people about, right? That again, there are people who have been targeted, but there's a community of people who kind of go over the edge. Okay. 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 All right. And Hempcar sent me Political Matrix and Graham Elwood and okay. All right. I don't know what you want me to take from any of that. Sorry, I hope I haven't triggered or upset you, Hempcar, and I don't want to disregard anyone's experience, right? We all have different experiences with this kind of thing. And yes, the government does target people and people get on lists, and I'm certainly on one of those lists. I mean, I've spoken to Putin, there's weird things that happen to me that I just notice. And, for example, right? We all know, right? For those of you who maybe don't know, I have had one interaction with US President Donald Trump. I think I have the video still. Yeah. This is the video that I made about my one interaction with President Trump. Kind of humorous.
Friends, this is Caleb. I'm just here in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, and this is a message going out to all my friends on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and whatnot. Happy New Year, first of all. Now, I've been looking back over the events of 2016. It was quite an eventful year. Now, one event that certainly stands out in my mind is an interaction that I had with the man who was elected president of the United States, Donald Trump. Now, on March 21st, Donald Trump came to Washington, D.C., and he gave a press conference at the old post office, which is becoming a Trump hotel. At that press conference, I spoke to Donald Trump, and I asked him, is it, Donald Trump, you've said that you favor better relations with Russia. Is this a difficult position to take with the media in an anti-Russian overdrive? So I asked Trump that question, and this is how he responded.
Sure, I want a better relationship with everybody. A better with Russia, yeah. But I want a better relationship with everybody. Go ahead. No, I don't think so. I think the media understands. Look, if we can get along, Putin says very nice things about me. I think that's very nice. It has no effect on me other than I think it's very nice. If we get along with Russia, that's very good. If Russia wants to spend millions of dollars a day dropping bombs on ISIS, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Some people don't like it. They say, no, that's our job. What's not our job? It's let Russia, if they want to do that, I'm all for it. No, I want to get along with all countries.
I was recently re-watching that clip, and one thing I noticed is that just before Donald Trump called on me and spoke to me, he said something that's rather interesting. This is what happened just before Donald Trump called on me.
Okay, one more question. One more. Who's got a good question? Who's got a good question? Who's my favorite reporter? Go ahead.
Someone could watch that clip and say, well, this is just a passing remark. He's just kind of talking as he's looking to call on anybody. He doesn't mean it. But I personally would like to give the President of the United States a little bit more credit than that. Is it possible that I'm actually Donald Trump's favorite reporter? Is it something about my reporting, my articles, my journalism that he really likes? I'd be curious to know. So if there's anyone here on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, who knows Donald Trump personally, perhaps they could ask him the question, why is it that I am Donald Trump's favorite reporter? Did he mean what he said? I'm very curious. So Happy New Year to everyone. Hope you're all well, and Be sure to follow me on social media and be sure to tune in to RT.
Yeah, that was my video back in 2016 at the end of the year. And I was just I thought it was funny. Donald Trump said, "Who's my favorite reporter?" You. So I feel like my next book, I should put "My Favorite Reporter, U.S. President Donald Trump" on the back of my book. I'm just being funny. Whatever. I was having a little fun with that. So anyway, I got to go to the next the next press conference by Trump, which was in early January of 2017, right before he took the oath of office. And I repeatedly tried to get Donald Trump's attention throughout that press conference. And I was, I'm like, trying to get his attention. So the New York Times mentioned me, and I kid you not, they called me a man claiming to be from RT. And I was like, are you kidding me? You do realize to get into a presidential press conference, you have to be credentialed. You have to go through the Secret Service. They don't just let anyone off the street. I was not a man claiming to be from RT. I have a name, but they clearly did not want to put my name in the New York Times. They don't want to draw people to draw attention to me and what I have to say, what I believe. And stuff like that happens to me all the time, where, they'll interview me and then, oh, darn, they just don't put the piece in, or, stuff like this happens. I'm on lists. I know that, right? You've seen the video of me with President Putin. You've seen the video of me with Ibrahim Riazi, right? I mean, I've had the knock on my door, the infamous knock on my door, right? I've dealt with, I'm on all their lists, and that's just part of what I have to deal with being, doing the work that I do. I'm flying above the radar, so to speak, and that's just how it works. I'm here on the internet talking to all of you, right? And that's just, that's just how all this works. But you don't want to go over the edge, right? And again, people get targeted. I've been targeted. You've seen the nasty lies they've put out there about me. At some point, during right during the pandemic, they decided to make me the bad face, the bad example of a socialist, right? At the inauguration, Washington Post took pictures of our banner. I guess a 10-foot banner with Kim Jong-un on it just wasn't noteworthy. Yeah, exactly, right? That they ran our names, they ran the name of the group and said, nope, you can't promote them, right? I mean, that's how these things work. At one point during the pandemic, they decided to make me the bad example. Like, I'm supposed to be the guy you're not supposed to be. And in fact, actually, what's his name even called me that at one point. The one guy, I can't even remember, one of these internet guys, Secular Talk, what's his name? Kyle, whatever. He said, don't be that guy. Don't be Caleb Maupin. Right. So like they tried to make me the bad example, and that was huge. That was great. It was great publicity for me, honestly. And that's kind of how CPI got going, is during the pandemic, I got a huge amount of attention for being the bad example of the evil socialist who's actually anti-imperialist and doesn't, want to kill all Trump supporters. Right. And that was great for CPI. And that was a step forward. And that, there are other things that go on. Look, I will say this, okay? And I want to be careful how I say things here. How do I say this without, I have to be cautious how I talk about this. Be very careful. Let me emphasize this again. Be very careful. And look, in the lead up to Charlottesville, there were all kinds of people who went down to Charlottesville thinking it was just going to be another protest. And look what happened in Charlottesville. And January 6th, there were all kinds of people who went to the Capitol thinking it was just another Trumper rally, and the doors to the Capitol building got left open. And be very, very careful. There are some shady things going on right now. There are some communist sleeper organizations that are out there. That's what we've been calling them, that are not authentic, that are being boosted by the government and by the social media algorithms, and something's going on. And on the one hand, they could just be collecting people's information, and on the other hand, they could be like preparing to use these people in a false flag to justify war with Venezuela or justify an attack on China or something. Be very, very careful. I'm just warning you. there are a couple groups going around at this point that don't do any political education, don't teach anybody anything, but they engage in a huge amount of theatrics, just running around. Look at us, we're communists, we got red flags, yeah. And they don't teach anybody anything, and they're not doing any real serious political education. They're just kind of using the name of communism to attract people and use them to scare conservatives and scare Republicans and maybe something else. And I am urging you, right, if you are considering joining one of those groups, think again. Right. We at this point in CPI, we no longer use the communist label because we're not communists. Right. Communism, unfortunately, is associated with dialectical materialism and the aesthetic of the French Revolution, the guillotine, the red is the flag of blood, red is the flag of sexual passion. We believe in a planned economy. We want the banks, factories, and industries to be organized to serve public good and not the profits of a wealthy few. We are anti-imperialists because this global imperialist system is the main danger to humanity. But we're no longer identifying as communists because communism at this point, right, the communism of the Cold War is over. No one in the world is adopting the Soviet system anymore. And the countries where communist parties are in power, like China, like, Vietnam, like Cuba, like North Korea, those communist parties are actively trying to implement, a planned economy, that's like China. It's like socialism with Chinese characteristics, etc. And that they have very much repudiated the Cultural Revolution, and they are not trying to make people equal in poverty, and that the countries where communism is still in power are no longer putting out the destructive vibe. They're pushing national unity, physical fitness, love of the country, love of community. They're not putting out the dialectical materialist message. And in the West, communism is very much associated with a destructive mindset that the actual communist governments moved away from. And most Western communists don't support those governments. And communism just means woke person to most people. So in order to build a real anti-imperialist movement, we can't be communists anymore, right? We are, I actually had a graphic I made a little while back, where I kind of explained it, right? That we're not breaking with an understanding of economics. I draw very heavily. I mean, we're the only people that talk about the tendency of the falling rate of profit. We're the only people who talk about the economics of imperialism. We're the only people who talk about value crisis. I mean, in a way, we are the only ones preserving what was good and correct about communism, right? All the communists have never heard of value crisis. They think the problem with capitalism is there's too much growth. Right? We're the only ones who understand what Marx and Engels wrote and what is written in Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific about capitalism holding back growth. We're the only ones who understand that the basis of the higher stage of communism is vast material abundance. We're the only ones who understand that imperialism is an economic system. Right? We're the only ones who understand any of this. Like, in a way, we're the only ones holding on to the good stuff about communism. Meanwhile, there are certain forces that are hijacking the label of communism to do very, very bad things. And we have broken with the destructive mindset, the dialectical materialist, mindset that says destruction, tearing things down. The communist countries no longer do that, but Western communists don't support the communist countries. They just are holding on to that mindset. We've broken with that. And we're doing something different because we want to build a real anti-imperialist movement. There are people that are out there just holding on to the communist label for no other reason. They're not teaching anybody anything. They're just holding on to that label, just waving red flags, waving hammers and sickles. We are communists. Look at us. We are communists. Something dangerous is going on. Something dangerous is going on. Okay, I don't know what it is exactly, and it may be multiple things. It may be a lot of different things. But I'm warning you: if you see an organization that is doing that, right? They're doing that they're just owning the communist label and collecting people and making scare porn for conservatives. Stay away. That is my advice. And if you want to know, this is the graphic. Innovationism is a new and exciting political movement. One thing that separates us from communists and the left in America is that we are not motivated by vengeance, resentment, a desire for cathartic revenge, or hatred of the United States. We are motivated by love of our families, our communities, our country, and humanity itself. We celebrate human creative power and the ability to propel toward a higher state of abundance. We want a government that breaks the power of the big monopolies and the irrationality of the market in order to unleash human creativity, create greater abundance, and allow people to live in prosperity. We're doing something that's about love and building people up and solidarity. We are not trying to get revenge on the rich people. I went to a DSA meeting years ago and I saw they literally had necklaces of the guillotine. Literally, right? That's not us. That's not us. We are not trying to enact vengeance, right? We are not trying to enact vengeance. We are not trying to unleash people's rage and libidinal stuff. We're trying to build people up. We're trying to build a community that builds people up. And enables people to be stronger, enables people to feel loved and connected, enables people to mobilize. We're putting forward a program, a constructive program to build up the country and make the country better. We're doing something very, very different. We've taken the best of communism, anti-imperialism, an understanding of economics, and we have moved away from the kind of spiritual curse that hangs over communism, that the communist governments around the world have largely moved away from as well. So on that note, folks, I don't see any more questions that have come in, which is fine, right? People, hey, it's been 2 hours. It's been a good stream. So I want to remind you all to register for our event that's coming up in January. It's going to be a very, very good event. I'm really, really excited. I hope that you all will be there. It's going to be a great, great event, and I want you all to register for it. It's going to be awesome. Here's the registration link. I will put the registration link in the chat. I hope you all will be there, and I hope you all have a very good night. I won't be streaming tomorrow, but there's going to be a thing. I'll probably stream again on Monday. So join us again on Monday. You can send Buy Me a Coffee questions later if you want. If you want to give me questions for, the next time I stream, feel free. We're always doing good stuff here. Register for our upcoming event. It's going to be very badass and very awesome. I'm very, very excited about it. It's going to be a very, very cool, awesome gathering. Hope to see you all in New Jersey on January 11th. And we are now going to put on the closing music. Thank you, everybody. My best wishes to all of you. I love this community. I really, really do. I really, really do. Sometimes some people in our community are having a bit of a rough time, and we're here for everybody, and it's not easy, and everything doesn't always go right. But we are a community of people that are here for each other. We hold each other up in the face of this onslaught. So dare to struggle, dare to win. And I'm going to put on the closing music. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.